Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Hello and welcome to Two-Way Talk Basketball Podcast, talking about everything basketball from both perspectives. With dual Olympian and NBL champion Mark Worthington and dual Olympian and 2 times NBL MVP Chris Anstey, hosted by sports presenters Candy Hertz and Nathan Stremple. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome to Two-Way Talk Podcast. My name's Candy Hertz, and tonight I am joined by Mark Worthington and Chris Anstey. A notable miss today is Nathan Stremple. I always say I miss the team member that's here, but you guys always just say good riddance to them. I'm sorry.
We missed Nate. We just didn't miss Wortho.
Oh, sorry, Wortho. There is love in the team, I promise. We're so happy that everyone's joining us, of course, because we are smack bang in the middle of the season. How crazy is that? We're only 7 episodes into this. We do this bi-weekly and we're already halfway through the season. It's unbelievable to say that. And what's more unbelievable as we get into the highlights of the games that were on for the end of round 3 is that we had 3 WNBL games on our screen this Saturday night. Who would have thought in 2020 we'd say, hey, I could kick back on the couch for hours on end and watch live sport? How good is that? Let's get straight into some highlights of the very first game that we had. The Fire are a great team to watch this season, and we have a lot of belief in them as a team here at Two-Way Talk Podcast, but the dominant Flyers proved too strong for the young Townsville team on Saturday night. Now, we've seen the dynamic duo Shyla Hill and Lauren Nicholson dominating this season, and when Lauren copped a blow to the nose, suspected fracture, thanks to Jenna O'Hay, the dominant pair was separated and the effect on the Fire was quickly felt. Now, especially since she's been averaging 18 points a game, and believe it or not, she was actually yet to score in this matchup. Also, Kate Gaze didn't suit up due to a back injury, so it was a tough night for them. The Flyers, however, came together as a strong unit, sharing the ball with an impressive 30 assists to win the game 94-70. Now, the big scorers are 24 points, Liz Cambage with 26, 9 and 3, and Beck Cole 19, 4 and 8. Plus, guys, I think Liz has been eavesdropping on our show because she didn't commit even one foul this game. How impressive is that? Chris, the comment at the end of the game with the Flyers was ideally that they don't want to be winning games based on just outscoring their opponents. They really want to be stopping them at the other end. I know really often it's said games are usually won through defense. Is that what's needed in the league, especially with someone like the Flyers and pretty much everyone else as well this season? Is defense the thing that needs to be worked on the most?
It has to be. I wouldn't say it needs to be worked on the most, but that's the effort and that's the mindset area of the game that should be. It just shouldn't vary. Players, however talented a team is, they're going to miss shots. And so in the games when you're not shooting the ball very well, you need to be able to stick around so that when the shots start dropping, you're still in the game and not picking back a big lead. And that's exactly what the Flyers need. There's no questioning their offensive potency. They've got the most talented team in the league. We mentioned just a couple of episodes ago that their defense was non-disruptive. It was passive. I use a term that, it's like aeroplane defense. The defenders are just standing there with their hands out to the side, not doing anything. They look like aeroplanes. They've got to implement a full court defense. They've got to create a little bit more pressure. If the Flyers are able to take other teams out of what they want to do, plan A and plan B, they can't be beaten. But as it is, if they let teams get on a roll, get the shots that they want to get through their scout, then they come back to the pack a little bit. But again, I think that's going to be the biggest area of improvement for the Flyers as we move forward. And they were much better over this week.
I think for every other team, you need to be able to play defense versus the Flyers. Otherwise, you have no chance whatsoever. And if we look back earlier in the season and the teams that have beaten the Flyers, it's off the back of their defensive effort. Sure, you've got to be able to make shots. But if you don't create that defensive effort, then there's no chance of you beating the Flyers in the first place. I think now that we are at the midway point of the season, that the Flyers need to, like Chris said, be a little bit more disruptive. If they commit to just slightly that, I think they're the overwhelming favourites going forward to win this all. I know what Canberra has done. I know what the Boomers have done and a few other teams, but when you look at pure talent alone, the Flyers have got the most talented roster in this competition by a long way. And that disruption that they bring to the table, even if it's for, a token sort of pressure defense, I think that can cause a lot of havoc going forward.
With what you're saying though, Chris, is defense the last thing to come in a team? Like, given none of these teams really had a preseason, is defense the last thing to click as a team?
No, it's a first. It has to be the first. In the great teams that I've been a part of, and I've been lucky to be a part of a few, it's where you build your season. It's the non-negotiable. The offense is, in fact, the last thing that should come. Your reads start clicking late. Your touch gets better. You get the scout locked down even more tightly. No, it should be first.
Next up, in a hot Queensland minute, it looked like it was going to be a great contest between Adelaide and Sydney, with the lead changing 4 times in the first quarter. But some technical issues with the glitchy shot clock literally cooled everything off. The teams cooled down and momentum was lost, which is a bit of a bummer. It took a while for the game to get rolling again, Adelaide ending the first half in the lead with 32-26. The Flames came back with some bite and the scores were tied at three-quarter time, but Adelaide took the win with final scores 75 to Flames 53. Now, props to Annalie Maley, the little rebounding machine with 9 rebounds, but it's not really going to do all that much good when Sydney's shooting is 27% from the field and just 17 from the three-point range. Someone should please start etching Steph Talbot's name in a trophy, because she continued her fine form once again with 30 points and 12 rebounds, including a few threes in a row. I'm a bit confused having watched this game. I wasn't really sure how it was actually won. Weather, can you give us a bit of insight? Were Adelaide actually even the stronger team, or did Sydney have the goods, they just couldn't really finish? Therefore, if they can actually get the ball in the bucket, then is there a possibility they might be a good team?
Let's be honest, Sydney are horrendous right now. They're a bad team, and I think for the most part we've saw their main players doing what they do. I love, like you said, Maley, and her effort to rebound the ball has been fantastic. I think even Lauren Scherf has stepped up a little bit more after we gave her a bit of a pasting, and she's been a bit more consistent. What's Nat Burton doing? She's been a non-factor this entire season. This is an Opal, by the way, an Opal player. They'll be hoping a lot more from her going forward. Swaggy B, as you guys like to call her, from the episode that I missed. Swaggy B, Lauren Mansfield, I think they are really respectable guards, but I think the consistency going forward and playing those minutes and being able to play at a high level consistently night in, night out is not quite there yet. Yeah, I don't know. I thought going into this game, and Chris and I had spoken about it, I thought Sydney should beat them. But going off that performance, I don't see Sydney beating a lot of teams in the back end of this season.
Candy, I think you got it right when you touched on the shooting percentage right at the start. And there's one player, and I wasn't sure whether or not to bring this up because oftentimes we watch games as ex-players and coaches and we see some things and we're not sure if we're being a little bit too harsh. You're right. We all love Annalie Maley's attempt to rebound, her endeavour to rebound. But I counted the amount of times through just being out of control and going free. She gets plenty, but she puts herself out of position so many times, ends up on the floor so many times that her opposition's running 5-on-4, 5-on-3 too often. That for every rebound she gets, she's giving up more and more on the other end. So as great as we love her intent and her effort, I think she just needs a little bit more craft in her decision-making and knowing when to go to the boards. And then the second part of that, and we've touched on it, for someone who rebounds that aggressively on the offensive end, you've got to be able to finish because otherwise you're just going to miss another shot. For someone who shoots the ball so close to the basket, Annalie's shooting 29% from 2 and 8% from 3. So it's out of control. It's off balance. She needs just to tidy up her strength, her composure, keep that aggressive mindset and intent. But I'll tell you what, Annalie Maley, for me, has the potential to be one of the most improved players in any league she plays in if she can just work on those elements of her game and play with a little bit more maturity and not just be so out of control.
Boo. It's not even December yet. Get out of here, Grinch. What are you like? If some of her teammates took a leap out of the book and actually played hard, then maybe Sydney would be doing a lot better. I understand. I think you bring up some very, very valid facts. But to point her out in a group that is not playing well altogether, I'd rather take her effort and her energy right now than a few of the other girls on that team and what they're not doing. I do agree with you.
It's a great starting point, Werther, of course, but to my point, her upside, if she can offensive rebound and finish through contact instead of falling down every time she gets hit, is incredible. I think she's got incredible upside. But for a team in the WNBL who we thought was a chance to compete for finals, to be shooting the ball at 29% from the field, and she's one of your key frontline players playing 30 plus minutes a game, you're not going to win many games.
And so I'd go back to this, Chris. Last year, she was a spare part on the Flyers roster, hardly used at all. And now she's been given an opportunity. I love the fact that she goes after it as hard as what she does. Does she have things to learn? Absolutely. Like you said, a great starting point to be with. But at least you know the effort and the energy that she's going to bring. I think with time played and more responsibility given, which she's gotten so far this year, yes, those things can be looked at and probably better than what she's doing right now. But as a starting point, a fantastic place to start from with that effort and energy because she's taking the opportunity given to her right now. And you can't say to anyone else on that roster that you go, they're giving as much energy and effort as what she is.
I think we're agreeing. Can you imagine if Lauren Scherf played with that energy?
Guys, does it say a lot about her character, though? The fact that she has this really low shooting percentage but still has the courage to keep taking that shot each time, does that not have a big impact on the type of character that she is on the team?
You could argue it's either confidence or undisciplined. It depends what side of the fence you sit on.
I think you're looking for the word stupidity. That's what you would have said to me if I was shooting at that percentage. And you're right. I think there is. But if you rebound that close to the basket, I'd want you to put the ball back up. I think what Chris is trying to say is learning how to finish over people. And you might get fouled every now and then, but when you throw yourself on the floor as much as what you do, I think after a little bit, the referees start to say, well, that's that's a habit.
That's a really good segue, because one of the absolute pandemics, epidemics, whichever word we want to use in the WNBL right now, is we're seeing more and more players drive to the basket or get into a contested shooting position near the rim, and their only intent is to get fouled and fall down and not to finish. I think the next step for the WNBL as a whole is to develop and improve as a contested finishing league, where the girls drive, seek contact, but seek contact with the intent to finish, not the intent to get to the free throw line. It's a really big step that the league can take. We've got the talent to do it. The referees have got to stop rewarding the girls who flop. But again, that's another really important step this league can take, and I think it's an easy step to take, especially if it's emphasised at training. Contested finishes is a really, really easy drill you can do every session.
Let's move straight into a quick summary of the next matchup, which was between Bendigo and the Caps. Bendigo came out gutsy with Carly Ernst making a statement with the first scores on the boards. But the end of this tale is no. Bendigo didn't surprise us with some magical win over the top of the ladder, but it would have made for a good story if they did. Bendigo do have a star in Tess Lavey, who is the only player on her team to score double digits, compared to the Caps, who, high five, had almost every single team member get points on the board, just bar one. On a side note, it was the first time the Froling sisters came up against each other this season, with Keely walking away with bragging rights. We have spoken a bit about the Froling family, and of course we've seen a bit of the matchup with Sam and Harry as well in the NBL, so it'll be fun to watch these two progress as the years go on. So next up, Game 4, Adelaide v Flyers. This game was probably the most interesting game we were excited to catch this round. Adelaide, despite being down 3 players and 2 of them starters, came out strong in the first period, with Abigail Werung scoring a couple of threes to set the tone. Adelaide won the first period by 3 points, and scores looked fairly even at halftime, with Adelaide at 47 and Flyers at 57. But then Jenna O'Hay shot a cool 3 triples at the start of the second term, and the Flyers took over. Steph Talbot, normally a dominant force for Adelaide, she scored 30 the night before, was obviously the one that the Flyers knew they had to shut down. And Sarah Blitzars did that with a great job of limiting her to only 6 points the entire game. The game ended 110 to Flyers, with Adelaide trailing with just 79 points. The whole Flyers bench had a run again this time with everyone scoring. This team is building some serious confidence. I hope they just don't become a bit complacent now with all these wins. But these two teams are playing each other once again this Wednesday night. So, Chris, if you're Adelaide, aside from getting your whole team on the court again, what would you change?
What would I change? Well, I think any team that plays the Flyers are going to look at a number of ways to defend Liz Cambridge in the post. Do we front her? Do we send a trap as soon as the ball's passed? Do we trap her when she catches it? They'll look at a whole bunch of different ways to defend Liz. But the pattern that we're beginning to see is that I think opposition teams are going to rest some of their starters when they play against the Flyers. So the Flyers are going to get even more soft wins than they probably would have, because teams are coming into games assuming they're going to lose. And we've mentioned they need to win the games against teams in the same area of the ladder as them. So they certainly don't want to get their starters all beat up in a game that they'll probably lose anyway. If anything, they want to try a few defensive strategies with their bench players, see what works, see what doesn't, wait until they've got their full roster and take a swing at the Flyers in a one-off finals game and see if they can't surprise them. So what do they want to get from it? Probably another loss, some minutes into the bench, some rest into their starters. I'm not sure that Adelaide are too worried about winning on Wednesday. They're more worried about looking at what type of defensive strategies might work as a team, keep something up their sleeve and hope to surprise them if they do come across them in the finals.
Yeah, for me, this game showed how important Alex Wilson is for Adelaide. That solid ball handler that's able to look after it. Her missing amongst other people probably showed where Adelaide's at the moment, because really that she is their second best player on the team. As for the Flyers, I think they're just starting to hit their stride a little bit. Like, yes, I think there's probably going to be a couple of soft wins in there for them off the back of what Chris just mentioned, that teams will probably rest their players knowing that they're not going to win against the Flyers in the first place. But I'd probably like to see more teams change up more frequently their defense from man to zone to trapping the post to not trapping the post, which comes with great communication from the coaches and great understanding from the players of what they're doing at the time, because it only takes one person not to know what you're doing to let that all unravel. I'd like to see which team has got the capabilities to be able to do that. I'd expect someone like a Chris Lucas has spoken about stuff like this, and we saw earlier in the season when they played the Capitals that they were able to change their defense quite regularly. I think most teams going forward will have to have this approach going against the Flyers, because the one thing that I know is for a really good player, you can't allow them to get comfortable and get good looks constantly. And for someone like Liz Cambage to be able to not understand what the defense is doing and try and second guess, I think will be a great benefit to any team going forward versus the Flyers.
If you have to pick one play to go against Liz to stop her, one run of defense, what are you going to do? What would you suggest?
Put Chris Anstey on
there. different looks every possession. Trap her early, trap her late, send her baseline, deny her, keep her guessing. And you know what I'd do? I'd pinch her. I'd give her little elbows in the ribs. I'd try to get her frustrated. I'd want her to lash out and pick up some early fouls. The most effective place Liz Cambage can be if you're the opposition is on the bench.
I think if I can cast my mind back to when I used to play for the Sydney Kings and we played against China, and our starting centre, our backup centre, and our backup centre all fouled out at 3/4 time versus Yao Ming, and I had to play against him. And Gorgian just said, once you get to half court, just get into his legs and try to wear him down. Now, I was stuffed by the time that game was finished for playing against him for a whole quarter. But he did get frustrated and he started to want to push me, and he got one or two cheap fouls just because he was irritated by me. And I think if you're playing against Liz, you have to do something similar. Wait till she gets to half court and just stop on a dime and let her run into you, and just do it constantly. So it takes more effort for her to get down to the court. That would probably be one approach that I would take.
Hang on, are you allowed to pinch? Is that allowed?
Of course not.
There's no pinching in basketball.
It's only a foul if the referees see you.
Girls have long nails. A pinch would hurt. Do you know actually what they could do? And I chatted to a good girlfriend of mine who is a ref, and she was saying to me, I said to her, a lot of the girls wear their hair in a plait, like up in a high pony and then with a plait. And I said to her, is that allowed? She said, actually, it's not. And it hurts a lot if that plait whips around and hits him in the face. So I don't know how it's being allowed in the WML, but it is. I've seen it many times. So maybe that's our equivalent of pinching.
I'd rather that
than be dangerous.
Yeah, I'd rather that than watching Larry Davidson go around with a pirate bandana. So
let me say, you would not want to be hit in the face by a big hairy braid. I never wish that on my worst enemy. All right, let's get to the very last game of this round. This is the longest round. It was a 12-game round. It was 5th and 6th taking on each other, Sydney versus Townsville. Now, Sydney came out aggressively in that first half with Lauren Scherf sitting at 15 points at the halftime break. But the highlights pretty much ended there. She only scored another 3 for the rest of the game. Townsville knew they needed to lift their defensive game after the halftime break, and that's what we saw the rest of the game. We didn't expect to see the band back together so soon, but the good news is Lauren Nicholson recovered quickly from her nose injury. Obviously, it wasn't a fracture, and her and Shyla Hill picked up where they left off. Shyla seemed to always need a little bit of time to warm up into her game, but when she does, she catches fire quickly. She finished the game with 15, 5 and 6, and Zatina Okuso was a star as well with a double-double. The game ended with Townsville 73 and Sydney 59. Though we're sitting bang halfway through this season, and we've seen some impressive young guns like Shyla and Zatina. They're really starting to prove to be a bit of a threat this season. Can they keep that momentum, do you think, even though they're so young and they're still learning for the rest of this season? Or are we going to see them peter off a little bit?
Well, the first thing I'd say about this game before we get to that is a fantastic defensive effort in the second half, only to keep Sydney to 14 points in the second half of that game. And that's where they really turned it around. Watching the game, you see that Zatina and Shyla have fantastic chemistry already, and working off the pick and roll. Shyla was able to, distribute the ball to her and get her into great spots. As far as petering it out, I'd expect it for a lot of these players. They're going to have games where they're up and down, but for someone like Shiloh, she's got the ball in her hands a lot of the time. And you said she gets off to a slow start, but then she gets cooking. I think she sets the table for everyone else, and then she looks for her own shot. So it's not the fact that it's a cold start. I think she picks her points of when she starts to go, when she's a distributor, and then says, all right, now I can start to rattle off a few shots because everyone expects me to pass. She's a fantastic passer off the pick and roll. I think we saw once that she came off on the left side of the court, and with one hand, a bounce pass straight to Zatina and Stride, who was able to go up and get an and one. So I think if we're looking at all these young guns across the league, fatigue's going to come in at some stage because they've had a lot more responsibility this year. But someone like Shiloh is probably going to be okay because she has the ball in her hands the majority of the time. That's not to say down the back end when it comes finals time that the pressure's going to come up. But she's got great backup in Lauren Nicholson. I think Steph Reed has been fantastic, especially on the defensive end. She's been amazing this year coming off the bench and able to fill up. This is a girl that had a 50-point game for Frankston in the NBL 1 as well, not too long ago. So Townsville have got some really nice pieces there and a good young core. And if it's something that they can keep, that's another dynasty waiting to happen. But more than likely, Shiloh's bound for the WNBA and beyond going in the near future.
I'm really, really glad that you brought up Steph Reed because she was the one name that I've written down that we just haven't spoken enough about on this podcast because we've been speaking about the great young talent that Townsville have. And you're right, she had the 50-point game for Frankston. I saw her train a lot over the last 2 years with the Rangers who became the Flyers. And at times she looked absolutely out of her depth. She's very small. She needs some space to play and to be able to operate. But then you look at it, Shannon Seabohm coaches very, very differently to Cheryl Chambers. Shannon coached Steph at the university games to a gold medal, and he knows how she plays. So she comes up the floor, like you said, defensively, she's the best ball pressure guard defensively in the WNBL. She's shooting the three at 45%. She's shooting 48% from the field for someone so small, which means she's making incredibly smart decisions and taking the right shots. So I agree with her. I wanted to add her name to the list of young guns. I know she's 24 years old, but she has been invaluable. And I agree. What I assume her relationship to be with Shannon Seabohm, having played for him before, I agree. If he can keep some of these young players, they are going to be as tough as they are this year. They'll be even tougher in years to come.
Well, that was officially the longest round of the entire season, 12 games. It's a long round for this year. And we've got the ladder that we're going to have a look at. Now, we've put the ladder together based on win percentage, specifically, obviously, because Adelaide had quite a few games they missed because they were in quarantine. They will catch up. But at the meantime, this ladder looks a little bit different to the one that's on the WNBL website at the moment. This is probably more accurate for us to have a chat about. Guys, any thoughts on what you're seeing on the ladder so far? Of course, we're not terribly surprised with who's at the top, but what about who's in the middle?
My first thought is it's sad that we've got a more accurate ladder than the WNBL. That was my first thought. Now, look, it is still surprising that the Capitals are on top. Yes, they're defending champions, two-time defending champions, but they weren't built in the same way that the Flyers were built. They were built on culture. They were built on history. They were built on adding youth to veteran experience. The Flyers were built to win and to win now and to prepare as many Olympians for Tokyo as possible. So 5 games straight, they're on a great win streak. The Flyers are going to always be there, but I don't think there are too many surprises. I think we picked Adelaide to fall off top position very, very quickly. They've already done that, and unless Steph Talbot's a 30, 15, and 7 player, they're going to fall out of the top 4 and lose touch because Townsville are playing better than them at the moment.
I think the top 3 speak for itself. The bottom 3 speak for itself. And really what we're looking at for the rest of the season is Townsville versus Adelaide and where they land, because that realistically is the only place. 1 to 3 can change. Look, Bendigo's going to end last. Perth's going to be second last. Sydney's going to be third last. You can lock that in now pretty much. But the top three can still interchange, but it's that fourth and fifth spot that we're most interested about.
Chris, you're a betting man. What are we betting that Bendigo gets just one little win? Any chance?
I'm not betting on that.
No.
Look, they're you know what? I of course we all hope they will, but they're a fair way off it. We mentioned, I think they're going to have to start finding minutes for their younger players, see what they've got for next year moving forward. Their priorities are very different.
Wertho says no. Chris says no. Brad, who's behind the scenes, thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up. You think they will win a game? I think they're going to win a game too. Okay, so a few of us at least are still rooting for Bendigo, thinking about them. But we are smack bang halfway through. So let's have a quick look at some of the stats. These have actually changed quite a bit since we looked at them a week ago. No surprises there. Let's pull up some of those stats as we get into it for where we are at round 3. First up, high scorers and rebounds. What do we think were though? Oh, Chris, you wanted to talk.
Well, Liz is where she should be at the top of it now. I like seeing Tess and Kayla George there. And Steph Talbot, I mean, full credit to her. She's having one hell of a season. I think a round ago she was on top of points and rebounds. But, you know, right now I think she would have to be right there in the top 2 for MVP conversation.
And rebounds, very similar. We've mentioned Natalie Maley. We love her intent to go to the glass. Steph Talbot does a little bit of everything. And as you say, Wertho right there in MVP conversations. Like to see Liz rebound a little bit more, especially on the offensive end. I think no surprises on any of those leaderboards for me.
Next up, we've got another round of stats with assists and steals. I quite like these ones. What do you think, Wertho? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll tell you, I'm going to go first.
You go.
And this is an interesting one. For someone who's leading the league in assists, Tess Lavey plays a lot of minutes. I would love to see her have less assists. She could score 10 points a game more than what she is. We mentioned already she was having a massive scoring game. There aren't that many other players on her team who can actually score the ball. So 6 assists a game for Lavey playing for Bendigo is like having 10 assists a game playing for Canberra or the Flyers. I'd love to see her assist numbers actually come down a little bit and see her averaging 10 or 12 points more a game. And if they are to have a chance of winning a game, Lavey needs to go for 40 plus and have one of those games to get them over the line in a nail biter.
For me, I know she's injured right now, but probably a sign of how good of a season she was having was Tess Madgen, 3rd in points, 3rd in assists. She was doing it all for the Boomers, and unfortunate for the injury, and hopefully that thing's healing up nicely because we want to see the best of Tess going forward. Someone that is in that real fight for the opal spot down the end, but she was having a fantastic season. And when it comes to steals, I mean, Chris is a big guy. I'm a big guy. I don't care about steals. Chris doesn't care about steals. It is what it is.
You know what? Oftentimes players who lead the league in steals do a lot of other things wrong and take themselves out of plays. We'd rather play great positional, solid defense every single possession, come up with defensive rebounds and run. Sorry, I'll take my coach's hat off now.
I was about to say, what about blocks?
See, blocks are exactly like steals as we move to blocks. I couldn't care less how many shots you actually block. I care about how many you change, how many you influence. Can you contest every shot without fouling? So, you know, Luella Tomlinson and Liz Cambridge, they're the 2 best shot blockers in the league. Players are going to shoot balls into their hands enough times. So they lead that field goal percentage. You know, Megan Mackay it's great that she's shooting at such a high percentage. Liz should be. It's good to see her stretch the floor out a little bit. But as your girl Wertho, Tess Madgen, everything she's done has been efficient this year. And she's not the sort of player who only takes high percentage shots at the rim. She shoots that 3 ball well as well. So to see her 3rd in the league is really impressive.
Tess is really trying to move up the Madgen family tree of athletes at the moment, and I think she's Jack's one of my good mates, but he plays for Collingwood, so Tess is above Jack now for sure. She's always been above Jack, but I think a lot of things of what Chris said makes a lot of sense, and I think sometimes we read too much into stats. and what individuals do. And there's a much bigger picture out there. And I think Chris has spoken about it very well today.
What about our original predictions? We're halfway through. It's a good time to review them and see where we've got to. Does anyone want to, or does anyone wish they could make a revision to what they predicted? We'll have a look at what we all guessed, or is everyone pretty firm and happy with what they chose?
Go ahead, Chris.
No, you're on the left of the screen, whereas I feel like you should go first.
Well, MVP, Liz is right there, and obviously Steph Talbot is in that conversation as well. Youth player Shyla, I think that's looking pretty good at this stage. Coach of the year, Paul Goris, as the Capitals sit on top at 7-1. I am pretty happy, and another head wobble coming up your way. And as far as the champions, I'm the only person that hasn't picked the Flyers, so I'm going to keep the dream alive right now and hope that the Boomers come good towards the end of the season.
And I'm going to stick with Liz for MVP still. I think she's got another gear to get to. I picked Desi to win Youth Player of the Year, and while as amazing as I think she is and as she's easing into this season, if I could pick again now, I think I'd pick Shyla. I think Shyla's been more impressive and consistent over the course of this season. I picked Cheryl to win Coach of the Year, and oftentimes the coach of the team who finishes on top of the ladder will do that. Not sure if they take finals into account with the WNBL, but Shannon Seabohm for me and Paul Goris were, though. Paul Goris and Shannon Seabohm have been the two most impressive coaches in the league for me this season. You know, the Flyers are going to win anyway, and they've got a very one-dimensional plan at the moment. I'm sure Cheryl's got more up her sleeve, and she'll earn her money when the playoffs come around. But Shannon Seabohm and Paul Goris for me, and yeah, I still think the Flyers win it.
Guys, I thought I put the Boomers as the champs.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Don't jump on. No.
No, all I'm saying is I'm surprised and happy with my own prediction. I actually thought I had done that. So I'm glad someone kept a record. What about Jade Melbourne? She's not making her way into any of our conversation?
Not as the best in the league. As great as she's been, I still think Shyla's been. That's your very direct comparison. And Jade's had an absolute breakout year, but Shyla's been better.
Well, obviously we can't speak on behalf of Nathan, but do you think he's going to be pretty happy with what he's written up there?
No, his MVP
he said
is
Kelsey Griffin.
I'll tell you what, he's not far off on the bottom three.
Yeah. But the
he's
MVP
done pretty well.
Further off.
Oh, he's going to be so proud of himself when he has to listen to this. All righty, guys, this has been fun, but it's good to wrap up our round 3 of WNBL. Gosh, that really was a long one. So we have got we've obviously still got, we've had 31 games so far, so we've got 29 more to go, and then of course finals as well. Let's move off the WNBL now and move straight into our final play. NBL rumors and truths. Melbourne United, big call today. They've taken New Zealand's Scotty Hopson. I have to say I'm a mad fan. He was so much fun to watch last season, especially up in Brisbane when he had one round where he got 2 buzzer beater threes in that won them the game. So he's fun. I think he's fun. I'm excited that he's with United. Chris, what do you think?
Love him. He was an absolute standout in the NBL next year, and he'll be fantastic for United. And United have held true to what they do. They evaluate the rest of the league for talent and pay them more than what the other club can do. You look back at what they've done over the years. They stole Todd Blanchfield from Townsville, who, ironically, when I was coaching there, we had a really close look at Todd and loved him. But the Townsville Crocodiles were in so much trouble, and Todd being a local kid, we felt that ripping him out of his own hometown club would absolutely be demoralizing to the club. So we thought we did the right thing and left him alone. Sean Long was another one. He was a standout at New Zealand. United took him. Casey Prather, Mello Trimble, now Hopson. So they've got form. They've done the right thing. They've got a very good player. And maybe the more interesting one is I'm really, really interested. And we'll give him a plug. Andrew Bogut starts his own little podcast tomorrow, Rogue Bogues, and he's announcing where he'll be signing next year. And maybe he might be playing alongside Scotty Hopson if he doesn't go back to Sydney, because he's got family in Melbourne. He's got to get ready for the Olympics. I can't see him going somewhere else in the NBL unless it's Phoenix. But I
he's
must
not
admit,
going to United. I sussed out your rumor
Yeah,
today.
I do not believe the person you spoke to. I do not believe for 1 second. So if wherever Andrew Bogut's going, they're not going to tell us, and we'll be the last to know. But it'll be one of the Melbourne teams or Sydney, I think, if he stays in Australia. I just can't see him going anywhere else.
You think he'll play though?
Well, if he wants to play in Tokyo, he has to play. And there's too many games in the NBA. I don't think his body would hold up to the rigors of an NBA season to lead straight into an Olympic game. So the NBL schedule perfectly suits Andrew Bogut with where he's at his stage of at this stage of his career. He lives in Melbourne. He's building a home in Melbourne. United have said no. Phoenix have said no. One of them may be lying. Paul Smith at Sydney said he wishes whoever signs him the best.
Was that just to throw us off the scent?
But also, well, maybe because Bogut owns part of the Sydney Kings, so
so it would be
think he'd want to play for the team that he owns. So it's got to be. It has to be one of those three, doesn't it?
You can't own one and then play for another. Can you do that?
Well, we're in a league where the owner of the league owns a team, so you can do whatever you want in this league as far as that goes. Going back to Scotty Hobson, I think he is a fantastic player. We wait to see if he fits into the United system because sometimes the best player doesn't always fit the system suited. I think he had a lot more opportunities to go one-on-one in New Zealand, and I feel like Lamar Patterson will have just as good of a season as what Scotty Hobson had last year because of his ability to play one-on-one. As far as Bogut goes, if he's hanging up the boots, I think he goes down as one of the best Australian players ever to play basketball. He's been, I wouldn't say he's been controversial. I think he's been amusing. Controversial is for all the wrong reasons. And I don't think he's done anything that, a lot of athletes that get labeled controversial have done something that is very polarizing and different. Bogut hasn't done that. He's stuck pretty true to his word. He is very opinionated in what he says. But I think he's been fantastic for the league coming back. I think he's been a fantastic player overall. And whatever he chooses to do, that's on to him. So good luck, Bogues, for your next adventure, whether it is retirement or playing. Whatever that is, you deserve it because you've been one of the best that's ever done it out of Australia.
Confirming that you don't think his tweets are controversial? Are we talking just on the court?
They're honest. And Andrew Bogut represents everything that we all wish athletes would say but never do because when they're honest, they get shot down. And that hasn't bothered Bogues. He's had a shield of armor around him his whole career, which public perception hasn't bothered him and would be a lot more interesting as a sport. And all sports would be if they had more Andrew Boguts on social media and in the public.
Well, I know that's what you guys...
Compare him to some of the players from other sport that get done for DUIs, abuse, of course. All that sort of stuff. He hasn't done that once. And there's been nothing about that. All he does is get polarized for his opinion on things and his honest opinion about things. And you either love him or you hate him at the end of the day. And I think for the majority of us as athletes, we actually love him because he's doing a lot of things that probably people wish that they could do, but probably don't have the money to pay the fines that he does. So at the end of the day, I think he's been fantastic for our sport. And I think he's been fantastic for the league. And he's shone a lot of light on a lot of different topics that people weren't ready to pull the trigger on. But he was very open and honest about his thoughts. And for that, we need a lot more people like him in the world.
It leads perfectly into the next conversation. So for 13 years, Tony has been a ref, the female ref in the NBL. And for 10 of those years, she was the only female ref as well. I had the pleasure of getting to know her last year working up in Brisbane. But I know whether you're good friends with her. She put out an interesting post on social media this week. I'm going to read it quickly to you. It is on the screen. It says, She has a question. She said, to my diverse group of sporting friends, coaches, players, and refs, should referees be provided access to sports psychologists at the elite level? We talk a lot about mental health and well-being for elite athletes, and I just want to find out where officials sit in this conversation. What's interesting to note is she posted that question up, but she generated massive conversation, like hundreds of comments off the back of it, of varied thinking. And then 2 days later, she retired. So she's hung up the whistle, as she said, and she's now going to be a celebrant, which she'll be fantastic at. She's just a ball of fun, so I think she'll be great at that role. I hope that those two things aren't correlated. And Wertho, I know you know a lot more about this. This is a great thing for us to discuss. Should external parties to the elite players who operate at that elite level also have access to a bit more support?
Well, first things first. Tony Caldwell is one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. She was a fantastic ref as well. One of the few refs that would actually have a conversation with you on the court and tell you that she messed up if she felt like she messed up a call, which was really, really rare in the NBL. She was the lone female for a decade in a male-dominated industry that faced a lot more challenges than you or I will ever know in what she was able to do. It wasn't just probably the abuse that she copped from fans, players along the way. There was a lot of other obstacles in her way at the same time. Now, when it comes to her question posed, that probably all referees in all professional sports probably need some sort of help, because what we know now is they're a lot more accessible to be abused by social media and stuff like that. I think if the players have got that in place, which they do, then probably the referees need it as well. Now, majority of them are stubborn jackasses that probably don't even care that they're getting abused verbally by people, and it probably rolls off the back. But I think for most people, and someone for me who speaks on mental health quite a bit, that can also be a front and a facade, and probably some of those things probably hurt a lot more than what they're leading on.
100%.
So for Tony, she's probably copped a fair bit in her 13-year career. I don't think her question posing it has anything to do with her retirement. I think her time and her understanding of what's important is outweighed that deciding factor right there. And the one thing that I know is she's happy right now. And for me, to Tony, that's all I want for her, is to be happy moving forward in her life, because she definitely deserves it as a person.
Yep. On a real trivial note, but it actually affects us women. I remember her telling me one game something really silly, that they don't create a ref's uniform with a female shape in mind. So there's no women's top. So she was for 13 seasons wearing an oversized, uncomfortable uniform while she was trying to do her job. And I know that sounds like it's quite a trivial thing to bring up, but it's a big deal. You want to feel comfortable in your job in what you're wearing. You also want to feel respected. And I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect there when there's only the men's uniform. You know, it's not even, we're not even going to bother creating it for the women as well. So I can understand, just from a seriously beginning with a superficial level, how she might, or how anyone in that position might just not feel supported, I think. And then with what you're saying, absolutely, Wertho, the amount of abuse that you can cop, especially on something like Twitter, I don't cope with any of it. I can't, I should have a thicker skin. I've been in the media for a decade and I can't cope with it. So, and it's my profession to be in the media and to be a public face. She's just trying to do her job. It just so happens she's public with it. Well, I just wonder whether, like, did she say that she was going to retire? Did you know she was going to leave the sport?
I'd spoken to her prior to her announcement, and so we discussed a couple of things that will stay between her and I, but I know that, like I said to end with, that she's really happy now in where she is in life and what's going on in her world. And I think not just Tony, but I think everyone that finishes whatever you may be, a coach, a player, a referee, an administrator, you sort of learn that there's so many bigger things in life that mean so much more than the sport. The sport is a vehicle that has given us opportunity and taken us places and met new people and all that. But there's a lot of BS on the side that we have to put up with as well. And I think for Tony, I think for myself, I think for Chris, we now understand that there are so many things in life that are so much more important than what we deemed to be important at the time. But at the same time, we're all very grateful that we all had those experiences and were able to do what we were able to do through the sport of basketball.
And a final thought on the mental health side of things with sports like this, just in case anyone didn't realize, most of us who are hired, honestly, across the board, from behind the scenes to in front of the camera, we're mostly casual employees. So we don't have access to a business behind us who might be like, yeah, come and chat to our psychologist. We only have access to our own private stuff that we obviously have to pay for, who may not understand the sport or understand the pressures or understand the things around it. So I hear what Tony's saying, especially in that environment of casual employment, is, you know, you do need some support. So there is something definitely in that question and something that is worth, you know, a bigger conversation in the future as well. Guys, we are halfway through. This is good for us as well. We've just wrapped up our 7th episode, and we do have a massive round still this round as well. We've got quite a few games before we catch up with you. We usually catch up with you halfway through the week. Any games in that first few, guys, if you can see, I know the screen is little for you, games that might stand out. We've got Caps versus Melbourne, Perth versus Bendigo, Southside Adelaide, Sydney, and then Melbourne, and a couple more as well. If you do you have any thoughts?
Cap v Melbourne, we'll kick it off with that. Let's see where the Boomers are again. Let's see if the Capitals are the real deal. That's going to be a really important game for both teams moving into the finals.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
I'm with Chris with that one. That is the one game that we all need to watch, because I think that shapes where people land on the ladder as well, as far as the playoffs concerned.
Yep, I'm with you with that one. Guys, there are loads of games this round as well. So no matter what you do, you can get yourself some good basketball on TV. A reminder as well, off the back of our last chat that we just had a moment ago with regards to mental health, and Tony and us as well as our team. If anyone needs help, Lifeline 13 11 14, and talk to your friends, talk to us, talk to anyone that's in your world as well. If you need some help too, we're all, you know, it's definitely not something that should be experienced behind closed doors. So 13 11 14 if you need some help with Lifeline. But thank you so much for listening to us. We love having you as part of our podcast, and we would love you to subscribe and download on Apple iTunes or on Spotify as well. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Instagram. You can catch us everywhere. Basically, you can do whatever you want on social media. You'll find us somewhere. Please do interact. We love to ask some questions, and we want to engage with you and know what you're thinking as well. If you know any rumors, send them to us. If you have any tips for anything, send them to us, or any general thoughts. We'd love to hear from you in our inbox. So thank you so much for having a great evening with us. Wertho, it's been a pleasure. Chris Anstey, it's been a pleasure. Nathan, we've missed you, and we hope you'll be back soon. And we loved having everyone with us for Two Way Talk podcast. Have a great night. Goodbye.